leaders who were wanting to do something bigger, better. And I was sat where you were, and I was lapping up every single little bit of information. I was writing down all my nuggets. I was coming away with lots of action points of what I was going to do next. And all was going as usual, as tends to happen at these events, until about halfway through one of the final sessions of the day, you know, that final graveyard shift where everybody's on their knees and they're really tired and they can't take any more information. Really glad they didn't put me in that spot. But the organisers presented us all with a gift. And it was this plaque. I almost brought it with me, but it didn't fit in my handbag, and I thought, I can't bother to lug this around today, because it's quite big. It was kind of so big, a plastic, clear plaque that had 4 questions on it. And the organisers were presenting us with these plaques, and I was annoyed, thinking, this is one more piece of desk junk that I'm going to have to stick in my luggage on my way home. But I accepted it graciously, and I sat down back at my seat and I put it on the table in front of me. And as I did so, the question that was written on the top of that plaque, and it had 4 questions, leapt out at me with like a big thump in the chest. You ever had one of those moments and something like slaps you around the chops and you're like, oh, that got me. Maybe it was our last amazing speaker who just really got you in that, you know, it was just like whacking you around the chops. But that's what this plaque did for me. And it was a real life-changing moment. And that's what I want to talk to you about today, the 4 questions that were on my plaque. And the first one was, what do you want? That was the first question that stared me down as I looked back at it, sitting at the table. A really simple, really unassuming question, right? Probably have heard that question a million times. Was nothing new about it. But that question, in that particular moment, it was like it hung in the air. So much so that every time I was consciously breathing, I was feeling like I was inhaling that question. What did I want? It was, in some ways, quite an unfamiliar question. I don't know, for the women in the room, maybe this feels the same for you too, I don't know. But I was used to having a strong sense of purpose, and even maybe a sense of calling, and some sense of what I was really good at. But I was really unfamiliar with asking myself, what do I really want? And for the women in the room, most of us are used to caring for other people. We're used to taking care of other people's needs and their wants, right? And caring about what other people wanted. And I don't think, up until that point, I'd ever really contemplated or voiced out loud, or been brave enough to say what it was that I really wanted. Yet here was this question staring me down, pressing on my heart. It was like it was trying to sort of lift the curtain on my heart and peer inside for just a millisecond. And I was like, what do I want? As I returned home that evening, that question still sort of swirling around in my head, I started to write down everything that came to my mind. I wrote down what I wanted for my children, their futures, their lives, what I wanted for our home, our family life, my marriage, and even some fun adventures that we might go on as a family. But what did I really want? What was really important to me? I sat staring at an empty page for a while, because it was so much easier, right, to think about what everyone else wanted. It was hard to say out loud, what did I want? What did I want for my life? And maybe for no other reason than just because it was in me. It was something that I wanted, something that I could see, something that I could imagine, something that I could envisage. So I eventually wrote down, bravely, I want to sell my company for $100 million. And I want to build an investment firm that invests in women and helps women rise. And those thoughts completely caught me by surprise and off guard. That felt totally crazy to say out loud, and maybe for many of you, if you suddenly were to say the same thing, it would be completely crazy, right? Remember, I was you, sitting where you are right now. That was a really, really crazy thing to say. But almost like the moment I dared to say that out loud, I suddenly got clarity about what I was doing, where I was going, and why. I suddenly really had my big, audacious, hairy goals staring me down right in the face, and I needed to own it. Own that it was something that I wanted to make happen, and because if I could own it, I possibly could make it happen. And that's what I want to talk to you about this morning. Because most of us in this room are probably dreamers, right? We are probably visionaries, imagineers. We can see things that other people can't see. But here's the difference between being a dreamer and being an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs actually make things happen. They execute, right? They take what they can dream, what they can imagine, they get really clear about what they want, and then they go after it. They make it happen, quarter by quarter by quarter by quarter, and they bring something that other people can only imagine, and they actually bring it to life. And you know what? Execution is what sets entrepreneurs apart. And it's going to be what sets you apart from simply being a dreamer, from simply being an ideas person, and being someone who knows what they want and is not afraid to go and make that happen. And the amazing thing about that question, to me, is that the more you are crystal clear about what you want, the easier it is to get clarity around making that happen. When I was just growing and working in my business and pushing and ploughing on and doing the best I could to bring things to life that I could imagine, the heavier the lift seemed to be. But when I got really clear about what I wanted, which was build a $100 million company, then I started to get clear on the actions that I needed to take that were going to get me there. So I concentrated all my efforts on the single most important tasks and strategies that I needed to execute in making that happen. Now, we all know when you're working on a business, right, there are always 1,000,001 things that you could be spending your time on. Maybe 2 million things that you could be spending your time on. So how do you know where to concentrate your time and energy? You get really clear about the results that you are trying to achieve, right? Just like our sales guy was telling us, if you want to drive sales, you've got to pick up the phone and talk to people, right? You have to make calls. You have to physically do something to make something else happen. So I started asking myself, what was the next most important question that I needed to ask myself that was on that plan? Which was, what do you need to get it? So if you know what you want, what do you need to do to make that happen? What are the leading activities going to be to get your desired end result? Now, I wanted to have a company that was worth over $100 million. So what do you think became the single most important thing to think about, knowing that was what I wanted? What do you think? What do you think I needed to think about if I was going to have a $100 million company? What did I do next? Anyone tell me?
Write down your first step.
Yes, and what might that have been? What might my first step have been? I'm thinking, okay, I've got revenue, right? I've got some profitability. What am I going to need to know or do to think about having a $100 million company?
Really like that different scale.
Who was going to give it to you?
Who was going to give it to me? Interesting question, interesting thought.
What what am I going to do next to scale my business to get up?
How am I going to scale my business to get to that point? Yes.
What profitability you would need to sell your business now?
Bingo. I thought we'd get there eventually. Yes, exactly. What do my numbers need to be to sell my company for that amount of money? And all those answers were part of that, right? But it's like, if you know you want to sell your company for $100 million, how much profitability, or EBITDA, your bottom line, right? Your revenue is your top line, your EBITDA is your bottom line. What does your bottom line and your top line numbers need to look like to be worth $100 million? So then you can see, okay, how much sales do I need to drive? How many customers do I need to have? And you can start to break it down into bite-sized chunks. So I'm starting with, okay, where's my end? What's my end game? What do I want my end game to be? And where am I today? And what's in the gap? What's between where I am today and where I want to be? So what are the leading metrics that create value? That's what you've got to understand. What are the metrics that help give you a big, fat valuation? I had to understand how many sales I had to do, how much EBITDA I had to create, which really boiled down to having a strategy, which is coming back to how am I going to scale to get there? If I understand these are the numbers I'm trying to hit, what am I going to have to do to make that happen? I had to have a clear strategy and a clear business of how those sales were going to happen, who was going to be needed on my team to make those sales happen, how many even different revenue streams I might need to hit my big goal. Would I need to do something different today than we were already doing? So a strategy is just a fancy way of saying a plan, right? A plan, a roadmap to get you to the numbers that I needed to do. And when I broke down my crazy dream and got super granular about what it would take and who it would take and how long it was going to take, because it wasn't going to happen overnight, right? But I did need to craft a quarter by quarter plan to figure out how many quarters is that going to take to get me where I really want to be. And the strange thing was, once I started to plot it out, I started to imagine, okay, what would we have to do? It actually looked like it could happen much faster than I'd originally imagined. I could suddenly see a pathway in under 2 years to getting where I wanted to go, which totally blew my mind. I've been in business for about 7 years, maybe 8 years by this point, and I could suddenly see in less than 2 years we potentially could be a company that was worth over $100 million. That was a significant life-changing breakthrough. I mean, that was like, wow, that's suddenly possible. And I often think when we're at the beginning of a journey, we don't think about the end of the journey because it feels so far away, right? It just feels so out of context with where we are today. But when you break something down and you create a plan and you create a strategy, that's when you can start to see, okay, well, it takes us doing this, and then this, and then this, and then this, and then this, and this, to get you where you want to go. So imagine for a second if I said to you, in 2 years' time, maybe your company's not going to be worth 100 million, but maybe it's going to be worth 20 million. What would have happened in your business for that to be a reality? What significant breakthrough might have happened? What might have changed from what you're doing today to maybe what you're doing then? What would you have spent your time and energy on about where we were and what we were spending money on and what we were not spending money on? There was no more spending money on nice-to-have items. I had to get very focused thinking about every bit of cash in the business and what we would bring into the business to generate an ROI, a return on that investment. Every cent counted. And then the third thing was thinking about people. What people did I need on our bus to help me execute my vision? I needed the right people around me who could help me make my strategy, my big grand plan, happen. Because you know what? No one builds a multi-billion-dollar company or a multi-million-dollar company by themselves. No one. There's not been one entrepreneur on the entire planet that has built a seriously valuable business that did it all by themselves. So every second you waste not having the right people in place, the less things you are making happen. People are as critical as cash in your business. We can't afford to not hire the top talent that we need to help us make the big things that we want to make happen. Strategy, cash, people. You need all three of those things to help you execute and make happen the things that you want to make happen. Which leads me to my third question that was on my plaque that day, which was, what might get in your way? In other words, what's going to stop you from executing on your strategy? What could hold you back from making what you want a reality? In my experience, the biggest things that keep us held back from making the things we want possible is not the capital markets are against you, or that things didn't work out like you were hoping, or that you didn't get a lucky break that everything hinged on. The biggest challenge for almost every single one of us is quite simply our own thinking. Our own mindsets and thoughts are more likely to be the biggest thing that ever trips us up. Because here's the reality, folks, the universe is not going to lay out a beautiful, extinguished red carpet for you to walk on between where you are today and where you want to be tomorrow, and maybe towards your $100 million business. You are going to face obstacles, challenges, things will go wrong, things will not work out, people will betray you, people will steal from you, people will compete from you. But how you think about all those things will be the difference between success and failure. So let's change that question ever so slightly, shall we? What is practically getting in your way today? And how are you going to overcome that? What's getting in your way? Write it down for those of you who are taking notes. What is getting in my way, and how am I going to overcome that? What ways of thinking are tripping me up? Here's some common ones that I see amongst early stage entrepreneurs. And there are many, many more. Scarcity. I don't have enough time to do everything I need to do. I don't have enough resources to make something happen. I can't afford to hire great people. When we think those kind of thoughts, there is never enough. It's just fact. When you think like that, so it will be, right? But entrepreneurs are creative, imaginative, resourceful, and finding ways to get things done. You need to turn your scarcity on a head and look at it and go, how can I use this as an opportunity to help me do something creative? Companies that become $100 million companies aren't only venture-backed companies. They're not. They're people who drive revenue and create profitability. Those companies become valuable, right? So scarcity. Externalizing, here's another one. If this happens, we'll be in great shape. When this big contract closes, or when we get our big break, we'll really be able to get somewhere. I just need this thing to happen, and then all will be well. Great entrepreneurs are not waiting for things to happen. They are making great things happen. Here's another one. Playing it safe, playing it small. I can't make that leap right now because that's not where we're at. I can't afford to take that risk on. I just don't have enough resources. Here's a special one. It all depends on me. I just can't get the right staff to help me grow. What is the thinking that you struggle with that's most dangerous for you? What mindset is constantly tripping you up? Let's name it, right? Because if we can name it, we can tame it. Your greatest limitation, ultimately, and standing between you getting what you want, is really only you. I know, it sounds a bit mumbo-jumbo, right? It sounds a little preacher woman, but I really do believe that that is the truth. It's not cash, it's not resources, it's not skills, it's not knowledge, it's not how many conferences you've been to, it's just what's in your head. The last question on my plaque, and my last thought for the day. Number 4. How will I hold myself accountable? We need to know what we want. We need to understand what it's going to take to make that a reality. We need to understand what's going to get in our way and trip us up at every turn. And finally, we need someone or other people to help us stay on track. We need someone to hold us accountable to the things that we need to do, the way we need to think, the way we need to execute. That's really what someone holding you accountable really means, right? It's like having someone alongside you who knows your intentions and most likely your challenges, who will hold you accountable to go after your vision. For keeping your feet to the fire, with you executing on your strategy, with helping you overcome your addictive thinking patterns that keep shooting you in the foot. Someone who will walk alongside you and push you to be your best. So who do you need to help you stay accountable to your big dream, who will help you realise your big goals? Maybe that's a business coach, maybe it's a mentor, maybe it's a community like this one, but none of us can do it alone. It really does take a village to make the impossible possible. So ask for help. Ask for other people to hold you accountable for the things that you are trying to achieve. And you know, the better they are at being mean and nasty to you, the better it is. You want to be afraid of turning up and telling them you haven't done what you said you were going to do in the last quarter, right? You want to feel intimidated. That's what they're there to do. Hold your feet to the fire. And I think accountability is probably the most undersung hero in the business world. But the power of coaches and mentors really is underappreciated and undervalued. But when you think about it, no one wins the Rugby World Cup without a great coach, right? Or a great captain. No one builds $100 million companies without them either. So the question is just who's in your camp with you, and who can you get in your camp to be with you to help you go on the road you want to go on. So what do you want? Question number 1. What do I need to get it? Question number 2. What might get in my way? Question number 3. And how am I going to hold myself accountable? In less than a year, not 2 years, in less than a year from when I first asked those questions, I sold my company for over $100 million. Got really clear about what I wanted. Got clear about what was going to be needed to make that happen. And I made it happen. And here's the crazy thing. If I can do it, you can do it too.
Thank you so much, Sarah.